People think goals don't feel real until you feel motivated, see a clear path, or until life finally gives you a clean window to start. And honestly, that sounds reasonable. Because if something is truly important, shouldn't it feel urgent? Shouldn't it feel heavy in your chest? Shouldn't you wake up with that clean certainty? This matters instead of having to talk yourself into it. But here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Most people don't have a goal problem. They have a reality problem. Not reality like be practical. Reality like this. If your goal doesn't feel real, you treat it like it's optional. And when something is optional, it becomes the first thing you bargain away when life gets noisy. Not because you're weak, not because you're lazy, because your brain is doing what it's designed to do. Protect you from risk, disappointment, and the humiliation of trying hard and coming up short. The common belief is basically this: when the goal is meant for me, it will feel real. Or the softer version, once I'm ready, it'll click. So you wait for the emotional proof. You wait for the internal green light. You wait for the moment your future feels more believable than your present. And while you wait, your life keeps moving. Months pass, then years. And the scariest part is you don't even notice it happening, because delay doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like not yet. It feels like I'm still figuring it out. It feels like I'm being responsible. But deep down, you know the truth. The goal isn't real to you yet, because you haven't built a version of yourself that makes it real. And that's not an insult. That's the whole point of this video. Because once you understand why that unreal feeling exists, you stop fighting yourself, and you start building something that actually holds. That belief feels true, because modern life trains you to trust what feels immediate. Your phone rewards you instantly. Your calendar screams in real time. Your bills and responsibilities don't suggest themselves. They demand attention with consequences attached. So of course your goal feels faint next to things that can punish you today. Your nervous system is basically saying, handle what's in front of you. Survive the day. We can dream later. And there's an emotional appeal too. If the goal doesn't feel real yet, you don't have to risk failing at it. You can keep it safe in the category of potential. Potential is comforting because it lets you imagine a future without having to become the person who earns it. It lets you stay attached to the identity of someone who could, without facing the discomfort of someone who must. You see it everywhere. People say things like, I'm just trying to get my head right first. I need to get more discipline. Once I'm less busy, I'll finally lock in. I'm waiting for the right time. And again, this isn't sarcasm. This is normal. It's how people cope with the friction between what they want and what they trust themselves to do. Here's the real-world example. You can have a goal that lights you up when you talk about it. Starting a business, losing weight, writing a book, going back to school, or getting out of debt. But when it's time to do the boring, unglamorous part, it suddenly feels foggy, unreal, like a dream you'll get to later. Because dreams don't require proof. Dreams require imagination, and imagination feels good. But goals are different. Goals require contact. Goals require friction, and friction is where most people quietly step back. Where the belief breaks down is subtle, not dramatic. It's not like you suddenly realize you're wrong and throw your life into a new direction. It's quieter than that. The belief assumes real is a feeling you receive, like a signal. It assumes readiness arrives before commitment. It assumes that if something matters, it will pull you forward with enough emotional force to overcome distraction. But that's not how most real things happen. Most real things didn't feel real until they were already in motion. Responsibility, identity, relationships, parenthood, leadership, even adulthood. Nobody wakes up and feels ready for the weight of a new life chapter. It becomes real because you show up again and again until your brain stops treating it like a hypothetical. The hidden assumption is, if it matters, it will pull me. But goals usually don't pull. Goals sit still. They wait. They don't fight for your attention the way your phone does. They don't punish you immediately the way a bill does. They don't create instant consequences. And because they're not loud, you start treating them like they're optional, like they're imaginary. Here's the single flawed assumption, sharpened. You're waiting for belief to come. First, when belief is usually the result of repeated proof. Realness isn't a mood. It's a relationship built over time. Your goal doesn't feel real because you haven't given your brain enough evidence that it belongs in your real life. And the consequences aren't catastrophic. They're worse. they're invisible. You start making tiny agreements with yourself that you don't keep. Not out loud, quietly. Tomorrow, next week, after this season, once I'm less stressed. And every time you delay, you don't just lose time, you lose a little self-trust. That's the part people don't see. The compounding effect is identity. One missed day doesn't matter. One delayed week doesn't matter. But a pattern of delays becomes a training program. You're training your brain to experience your own promises as negotiable. And once your promises become negotiable, your confidence becomes fragile. You start needing perfect conditions just to begin. You start needing a surge of inspiration just to do what you said you would. And that's not because you're broken, it's because your nervous system learned that your future self is a story you tell, not a person you consistently support. Project this 3 years forward. If you keep treating your goal as something that becomes real later, you'll still be in the same place, but with more tiredness, more responsibilities, and a quieter belief that maybe it's not for you. Not because you failed, but because you never built the proof. 5 years forward, the goal still exists in your mind, but now it feels embarrassing to think about. It turns into that thing you avoid bringing up because it reminds you of a version of yourself you didn't become. And that's a subtle kind of grief, mourning a future you kept postponing. Here's what's actually true. Your goals don't feel real yet because you've treated them like a thought, not like a standard. A goal becomes real when it has a place in your life that doesn't require negotiation every time. Not because you feel ready, but because you've decided it belongs. Realness comes from repetition, not intensity. It's not the fire you feel, it's the weight of consistency. More concrete, your brain believes what you do, not what you think. Your brain doesn't register a goal as real because you wrote it down. It registers it as real when you behave like it's real often enough that it becomes part of your identity. That's why some people look disciplined from the outside. It's not because they have stronger willpower. It's because they stopped asking permission from their mood. They stopped waiting for the emotional signal. They built a standard, and the standard became a stabilizer. Standards remove debate, and debate is what drains you. When you accept this, behavior changes without you forcing it. Because you stop asking, "Do I feel like this today?" And you start measuring yourself by something quieter. Is this who I am? You're no longer trying to win an emotional argument with yourself. You're operating from an internal standard. And standards don't beg for motivation. They sit there steady, like gravity. This changes decisions in small, almost boring ways. You don't need a perfect week to begin. You don't need the whole plan to be visible. You don't need to feel inspired to be consistent. Under the old belief, you wait for the goal to feel urgent. Under the new belief, you treat it like a responsibility to your future self. So choices start to feel different. You notice the moment you're about to trade the goal for comfort, and you don't make it a drama. You don't shame yourself. You just recognize what's happening. I'm about to vote against the person I said I'm becoming. And that awareness alone changes the way you move. Because you're not chasing the outcome anymore. You're protecting your identity. And once you move that way, a standard gets set. Not a moral standard. Not a good person standard. A personal reliability standard. The kind that says, when I say something matters, I prove it. Quiet follow-through becomes part of your self-image. You stop needing to announce it. You stop needing to debate it. You become less interested in big resets and more interested in being the kind of person whose promises have weight. Over time, that builds long-term self-trust. The rare kind that doesn't crumble when life gets busy. Because you've seen yourself show up in imperfect conditions. And that's where confidence actually comes from. Not hype, not positive thinking, not some temporary burst of energy. Confidence comes from evidence, from lived proof. Now here's the gut punch ending most people need. If your goals don't feel real, it's not because you're missing clarity. It's because you've been living in a way that teaches your brain not to believe you. Read that again, because that's the real issue. Your brain isn't unmotivated. It's unconvinced. It has watched you promise and postpone, dream and delay, declare and disappear. So when you say, "This is my goal," your brain quietly responds, "Sure, I've heard this before." And that can sound harsh, but it's also the best news you'll hear all week. Because it means the problem isn't your potential. The problem is the relationship between your words and your actions. and relationships can be repaired. Your goal will start feeling real the moment you stop treating it like a distant idea and start treating it like a part of you that deserves consistent contact. Not grand gestures, not life overhaul fantasies, just enough honest proof that you're not playing with it anymore. And one day, if you keep giving it that contact, you'll notice something that hits you in the chest. You're not asking if you believe in your future anymore. You're acting like it exists. You're moving like someone who has already decided. The goal stops feeling like a dream and starts feeling like a direction. Not because the universe sent you motivation, because you become reliable. And when you become reliable, your goals don't need to feel real to matter. They feel real because you finally do.